Hello, I'm Don TInney, high school English teacher from South Hero, Vermont, currently serving as Vermont-NEA President. And I'm joined today by Senator Philip Baruth, Senator Ginny Lyons, Senator Chris Pearson, and Senator Michael Sirotkin, who all represent the Chittenden Senate District. Thank you all for joining us today. As Vermont-NEA members know, we are in the middle of a very unique legislative session, and we wanted to make sure that our members in the Chittenden Senate District had an opportunity to hear some legislative updates directly from you before you return to Montpelier in August. We know you have all been extremely busy in doing some important work supporting our students, families, educators, and communities as we navigate this pandemic. We're going to hear from each of you on one or two key issues that you have led on and are important for all educators and Vermont-NEA members to know about as we head into August. With that, we will start with Senator Phil Baruth, Chair of the Senate Education Committee.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate the opportunity to say hello to your members. I want to begin by saying thank you. All of you have already saved the day once. During the emergency, you were asked to shift on the fly to remote instruction. You did that and did it in a way that I think merits the word heroic, frontline, essential, all of the adjectives we've come to use for people who make the system go. You're now being asked to do it again. And I know that there is worry out in the field. I was on an NEA call not too long ago, and people from bus drivers to staff members to teachers had very valid concerns. Some of us in the Senate, including Senate President Tim Ashe, have been pushing for a statewide reopening commission. That has been opposed by the governor, but I am trying my best to work in ways that I can to push back the opening date and to make some of your concerns heard at that level of the governor's office. I wanted to, in the time I have left, just make it clear the shape of what we've done thus far. When the CARES money came through, $1.2 billion, we immediately put aside $150 million for K through 12. And of that, we have already appropriated $50 million. Of that $50 million, a big chunk was designed for paying COVID expenses that we'd already had. Another chunk was designed to provide nutrition over the summer. And my committee wrote a special grant program that's designed specifically to upgrade air circulation systems and HVAC systems in schools, because all the experts told us that was the best way to keep you and students safe. That's a $6.5 million program administered by Efficiency Vermont, and we're very hopeful that will help bring up the level of hygiene and lower the level of transmission in every district that accesses that program. So when we return in August, there is $100 million remaining, and that is potentially of use to plug the hole in the Ed Fund, which, as you know, has a gaping hole of $100 or so million. If we are not granted the flexibility to use it for that, we will be thrown on worse solutions. You know, and I know that that would involve cutting money for students, cutting budgets that have already been passed. None of us want to go in that direction, and we're doing everything we can to prevent it, including working with our federal delegation. So fingers crossed that the next bill that comes out of the federal government will allow us that flexibility and additional funds to pass on to you. So that's where we are, and again, thanks again.
Thank you, Senator Baruth. Now we'll hear from Senator Lyons, Chair of the Senate Health and Welfare Committee.
Thank you, Don. And I would like to reiterate Senator Baruth's thanks to all of your members who work so quickly to change direction and have moved from school to home and are helping kids at home with remote learning. It's just, I can't imagine the stress involved and also the work that's been involved in doing that. And I do hope that we can have more of a statewide solution going forward There's no reason why we shouldn't all be able to sit down at a table and talk about what's best for kids, for parents, for families. Senate Health and Welfare spent several months, the whole time from March through June, looking at how we can provide resources for our healthcare system as well as our welfare system. When we look at healthcare, of course, we're talking about hospitals, providers, we're talking about long-term care facilities, residential care facilities. But when we look at human services, we're talking at some more discrete areas such as childcare. We spent a good amount of time figuring out how we can improve on the work that we did in past years to provide additional funds for families for childcare so that they have it and it's accessible. And right now we know that this is problematic when teachers are going back to work. Some of these teachers require childcare. Other families require childcare as they go back to work. So it is kind of a backbone business for other businesses. And we did work to add in $12 million of the CARES funding for after-school programs, the summer grants, the camp programs, but also for child cares and child care programs and parent-child centers. In addition to that work, there's another area that I think is important to talk about, and that's vulnerable populations, where we added $2 million for those folks who are more susceptible to COVID and might need some special attention as we go forward. And then also another area is a new American grant area of $700,000. There are populations, particularly in our district, that are not fluent in English and may not understand the consequences of COVID, what it means to go back to school, what kinds of equipment they might need for remote learning. And so we put $700,000 into that grant to help through our refugee resettlement program, as well as the African American League of Vermont. Those are some of the things we've done. I think our concerns stretch out to suicide prevention and stretch out to child abuse. We have not seen an increase in child abuse during the COVID experience. And yet there are some great concerns about what's happening to kids when they are not in maybe a good home environment. So those are some of the things that we have worked on. We do continue to have the concerns, I think, that are shared by a number of people sitting here together, how kids are going to make out when and if and how they return to school, whether it's remotely or whether it is at the school itself. So thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. Greatly appreciate it, Don.
Thank you, Senator Lyons. Next, we'll hear from Senator Pearson, member of the Senate Finance Committee.
Thanks, Don, and echo others who say thank you for giving us this opportunity. You know, COVID has been intense for all of us, and here in my home, my wife is a high school teacher in the public schools here in Chittenden County, and we have 2 girls in elementary school. So we've been living what I think a lot of your members are going through, trying to juggle 2 full-time parents, remote learning, remote teaching, in my case, remote legislating. So we have a deep appreciation for the challenges, and thank you to everybody who stepped up and tried to do your best for kids across the state. I've been reflecting on the deep uncertainty that COVID creates. I tell my second grader all the time, I just don't know. When will X happen? Can I do this? We just don't know. And that is a very hard thing to do as a parent and as teachers when we're in roles of authority and people look to us for answers and we have to say we don't know. I will say we do have some certainty though, and Senator Sirotkin and I serve on the Finance Committee that deals with the Ed Fund, deals with taxes. So for the Senate, he and I are strong allies of yours, and there are others on the committee. And in the midst of all the uncertainty, the Senate Finance Committee said with clarity, we will have the money to pay for schools. We don't know how we'll have the money, but we will finance schools. We will keep them going. We recognize you're actually going to have intense needs, even if you could just open under normal circumstances, which you can't. So we're committed to trying to figure that out. We've furthermore, as Senator Baruth alluded to, held aside some of the CARES money, resisting calls from the governor and others to get all that money out the door to help businesses. We were saying, no, we have a fall problem for our schools. We need to see if the federal government will let us use some of this money to keep our schools whole and keep them moving. So you have some pieces of certainty coming out of Senate Finance and your allies here on the screen in the Vermont Senate. You know, I wouldn't say it's across the board and we don't have to worry. Obviously, how you open needs to keep teachers safe, needs to keep families and kids safe. And we're all trying to learn a lot. I would echo what Senator Tim Ashe and others have said, is trying to get your members at the table with the governor and the Commissioner of Health and others. It's vital that your voice be heard, and we want to amplify that call that you've made. So still a lot of uncertainty, but we're committed to keeping schools open and trying hard to meet the needs of schools in this trying time. Thank you, everybody, for working so hard. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Pearson. And finally, we will hear from Senator Sirotkin, Chair of the Senate Economic Development Committee. Senator?
Thank you, Don, and thank you to all the teachers and NEA staff around the state of Vermont. Just to pick up on what Senator Pearson said, I think it's really important. I serve on the Finance Committee as well. And as you know, probably know, the Ed Fund, which pays for the lion's share of our K through 12, is funded in significant part by consumption taxes. They have been hit incredibly hard in the COVID environment, such that if the projections held true, we would probably be looking at something like a 17% increase in people's property taxes. The Finance Committee has made it clear we're not going to let that happen, whether it's through the set aside of the CARES money or otherwise. We've already passed a yield bill that has property taxes going up more in the neighborhood of 3% for next year. So that's a big deal, because if you look at all the competing needs in state government, we've set the education fund on a higher platform and to be protected. In my committee, in the Economic Development Committee, I wanted to talk about two particular bills that impact the NEA and teachers. One is a bill that we started on even prior to COVID, and we're in the middle of doing now, and I'm committed to getting that bill all the way through the Senate, and it deals with collective bargaining for teachers and the state education system. And it's what I call the post-Janus bill. The Supreme Court came down with a decision that got rid of agency fee for public sector employees, which hit me personally because I spent 20 years representing labor in the State House, and we work very closely with the NEA in terms of getting an agency fee for schools in this state, and that was wiped out by the Janus decision. Which this bill will do will give you greater access to access to new employees who may be part of your collective bargaining units, the promotion of new units where it's necessary, and the ability to meet privately with folks to convince them the value of the union rather than taking a free ride on the union's back. The second bill, which we got passed just recently, deals with workers' compensation. When you get a infectious disease like COVID, it's workers' comp is premised on an injury happening at the place of work. And it's very hard to determine when you have something like an infectious disease, whether it happened at home or whether it happened in the workplace. This bill will give a presumption for frontline workers that they contracted it at their place of employment. Teachers are not listed among the professions that are frontline workers, but there is a catch-all in there whereby the Commissioner of Labor can say there's heightened risk comparable to firefighters or childcare workers that work with people take care of kids of essential workers, nurses, et cetera. So there is a way to get into this workers' compensation, which could be critical to hundreds of Vermonters who contract the disease. So we've been working on a lot of support for people who are unemployed. And in the case of teachers, they're what it's called, the school districts are called reimbursable employers. There's a provision in federal law which allows there to be a 50% savings to the school districts on paying those benefits. And I just end by saying, I just read an editorial by Superintendent Neese from the Harwood Union District, I think it was, and I think it really makes a strong case for what you're asking for, of some formal, ongoing structure of all the stakeholders to come together to come up with a statewide plan. It sounded very analogous to me to have helter-skelter out there with every school district doing different things and not being sure whether you can staff up properly. That's a formula for a disaster. So I hope there's a uniform plan that comes up, and I hope we do it right. And I thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Senator Sirotkin, and thank all of you for your leadership and work on these important issues. And I also appreciate your acknowledgement of how hard Vermont-NEA members have been working to support our students, families, and communities throughout this pandemic. And on their behalf, I want to thank you all for your work representing Chittenden County. Thank you very much for being here. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.